Today, I'm very, very clear that what I'm doing is the right thing. It's the kind thing.
Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 135 of Did You Bring the Hummus podcast. I'm Kimberly, your host, and I'm super excited to be here with you today. Did You Bring the Hummus is a podcast for all things vegan. Before we get started, I have one very important question for you. Did you bring the hummus? Today, I am joined by podcaster and author Cheryl Moss. Cheryl is a passionate advocate for animal welfare and an accomplished children's author. She's also a graduate of Main Street Vegan Academy. Me too. Her advocacy in children's literature has led her to author 3 illustrated books, Gabriel, Cluck, and Pickle the Pig, which encourage young readers to embrace kindness, plant-based eating, and environmental awareness. Expanding her impact, Cheryl is the creator and host of the podcast Better Life for Animals, Tales of Sanctuary Compassion, where she shares uplifting stories from animal sanctuaries and highlights the transformative power of kindness and advocacy. The podcast features vegan guests, ethical consumers, and animal welfare leaders to share their experiences, strategies, and passion for change. In this episode, Cheryl will demonstrate what she meant in that quote that kicked off the show. Let's get into it. Hey, Cheryl, welcome. I'm so excited to have you here with me tonight.
Well, thank you, Kimberly. It's a pleasure.
I am so excited about this conversation, and you were just doing something so cool, and we'll get to that, probably the second point that we'll talk about tonight. But first, I'd love for you to share your vegan journey.
Sure. Well, I've been vegan curious when I was in my 30s. I'm in my 60s now, so that's 30 years. And I tried different types of cleanses and what have you. And I was becoming aware of what happened to animals in factory farming. So that was in my mind, but it really wasn't until my 40s when I realized I had just needed to give this up, that there was nothing but cruelty to be had in, say, cheese or salmon, which were probably the last 2 things I had to say enough, because we just weren't giving animals a life. And for me, once I made that decision, I was done. So it's been over 25 years when the last time I ate anything that had feelings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did that come to, you said you started learning about and what happens to animals in factory farming. How did that come across your life? How did you find out about that?
Well, I don't remember that the information wasn't coming at me. This was internet.
Mm-hmm.
But, this idea that we were raised with, and I was raised with, certainly, that cows have a great life, but that they're giving us that milk that they don't need anyway. I didn't know that isn't true. It wasn't until I looked into it that I got to see how, no, those cows are forcibly inseminated, to be pregnant, to have a baby that gets ripped from them. As a mother, that's just tragic. And to learn that cows are just like big dogs, And so that extends to all animals, and it included fish, because fish are being suffocated. They're being, it's not a good way to go. It's just, there is no situation where it makes it okay. I had to say no to that, because we don't want to participate in that, but you don't need it.
Right.
That became very clear.
Yeah.
I consider myself to be a very healthy person. I've always cared about my health. I've always tried to exercise and, tried to stay on top of things. But today I'm very, very clear that what I'm doing is the right thing. It's the kind thing.
Mm-hmm.
And, we can get into this or not, but what's happening right now politically and with the way the food pyramid is changing, I'm of the belief that you just can't listen these days. You have to get your own information. You have to do your own research, because nothing that's happening right now is supported by science. And it certainly is not kind.
No.
And I try to use that as my North Star.
Yeah. Yeah, we can definitely get into that because
okay.
And I maybe not. I don't know if I even have words, but I have not historically been too caught up in is this healthy for me? All that mattered for a very long time was that it didn't include animals and that animals weren't being harmed. And so, if a new vegan burger came out, I wanted to try it. New vegan ice cream flavor, give it to me, And so I am definitely not sitting here saying that I know so much about health and I am proof of health. However, just even common sense, I think, if you don't have any nutritional know-how, I think common sense, if we tune into ourselves, would tell us vegetables make me feel good. Mm-hmm. A 24-ounce steak does not, or whatever sizes they come in. I'm seeing in my head the image of RFK Jr. sitting there with the steak in front of him and the birthday candles, right? So, and tell me your thoughts, because you have, I think you've got more, as a person who cares about their health and those types of things. What do you have to say about this?
Well, I give the current administration zero credibility. Mm-hmm. If they happen to get one thing right inadvertently while they're doing 20 things wrong, I've pretty much just turned them off, because I feel I have the information that I need to take care of my body. I know that what I'm doing is minimal harm. I know that what I'm doing works for my body. I'm not a young person. I can't eat like I did when I was in my 20s, 30s, or 40s. If I like junk food? Yeah. I mean, my favorite food is probably Ruffles potato chips. Okay. But I know I can't eat them. They're going to they're not going to go down well. Right. There's all kinds of vegan fast food options if that's the way you want to go. And I've eaten all of them. Okay. Mm-hmm. That's not the best choice, but we all make choices sometimes based on how we're feeling emotionally at that moment. I'm an emotional eater. I get that. Okay. But I have cleaned off the cruel options. Mm-hmm. If I'm going to be cruel, I'm being cruel to myself.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
I'm allowed to do that. And I don't eat cheese. Mm-hmm. It's not that I don't know what it tastes like. It would upset me these days to know what that animal went through so that I could have some cheese when there are, and there are wonderful, increasingly wonderful options. They're getting better all the time. So I'm happy about that. But cheese is still a heavy, fatty food that even in the plant-based world, it's nuts. Mm-hmm. Those are healthy, but they're healthy in moderation. Yeah. So personally, I can't eat a lot of that, but I certainly know what it tastes like, and I'm happy to try it, and I'm happy to offer it to my friends, as I'm forever trying to, promote the message of, cruelty free.
Mm-hmm.
Cruelty free.
Yeah. Yeah. And there is nothing about this administration in the health arena or otherwise that is cruelty free. It's very clear that their agenda is harm, harm, harm. And when those guidelines came out, that was right in alignment with that. So yeah, people who see those guidelines, like, take a look at older ones. Take a look at the way Dr. Greger talks about them in nutritionfacts.org, or visit pcrm.org and check out what Dr. Neil Barnard has to say about it. Like, these are people who have done real research, who have real medical, scientific backgrounds, who understand nutrients and the human body in a way that no one in that administration ever could.
No, it's not even on their agenda.
Right.
Because I believe that the lobbyists are getting their way right now. But that's now.
Mm-hmm.
I have to remain optimistic that
Right.
this is just a trend,
Mm-hmm.
and it will wane, and we will see another day. I went to dinner Saturday night. I live in Las Vegas. We have a Crossroads, and it was completely full.
Nice.
Yes.
Wonderful.
With all that's going on, and they have many choices, and this restaurant is packed. So we're still there.
Yes. Yes. That's so important too, because every time I turn around, right, there's another article or another post on Instagram about how veganism is dying and nobody's doing it anymore. But, we've always been a small number of the population. And there's just going to be also, nobody has any money to go out regularly. So even, you go out to eat like you were able to recently, but that, people aren't doing it as much as they used to. So it's not just vegan restaurants that are maybe declining. It's all restaurants that are struggling right now. Because when you have to choose between one meal for you and your family that will cost you, let's just, on a low end, $100.
That's right.
And you could go spend $100 at the grocery store and get you a few more meals out of that.
That's right.
There's really you can't, what the right option is if you want to feed your family. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So,
and it remains true that, some of those dairy products, the meat, those are all subsidized. Some of this processed food that's just terrible for you, they're also subsidized. Mm-hmm. So, it's not out of the realm of possibility to get a really, healthy budget and plan for your family for a week that includes, mostly vegetables and fruit and, grains. It's completely doable. This idea that plant-based living is too expensive, I don't know that that's true. I don't think so. I think, where are you shopping and what are you buying? Because the basic foods are actually, in an unaffordable world, they're more affordable. They're in the affordable range. I'm not denying that everything is more expensive. Mm-hmm. There's no getting around that. But everything is more expensive.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And there is a big difference between when you are buying things you're going to cook at home, throwing together different ingredients to create something, versus going to the freezer section and buying a bunch of the processed stuff. Right. The vegan processed foods, fun and tasty as they may be, a bag of vegan chicken nuggets is between $5 and $9, depending on which brand here in New Jersey. So you can spend that, or you can get multiple bags of lentils for $5 to $9. And there's more effort. You can't just throw lentils in the oven and hope they come out as a full meal. You have to spend some time. And so there is this balance of, what do we have time for? What can we afford? And how do we make it work? But I agree with you that it can be really affordable when everything seems to be completely unaffordable.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've taken us off on a tangent, Cheryl, and I apologize for that.
No.
But I'd like to get back to what I alluded to at the beginning, which is this really cool thing that you recently did, which was a summit about farmed animal sanctuaries. Can you tell us all about that, how it went, what made you do it? Give me all the details.
Well, I, like yourself, as somebody who wants to do something about this big problem, what can I do? I have a voice. Mm-hmm. So I decided to go with the podcast, and I decided to talk about, I will talk to any vegan, but a lot of our emphasis this past year has been with sanctuaries, because sanctuaries are doing such fabulous work, and they are almost always taxed. They don't have maybe even the time to watch a podcast because they are dealing with a vet bill, or, grain, or putting up a fence, or, me sometimes while holding another job, all trying to rescue animals. So and in a world where we have extinguished some astonishing number, I'm not going to get this 100% right, but like 90% of the animals we have eliminated.
Oof.
So we have, our farmed animals that are put through just cruelty from start to finish. It is just wicked. Mm-hmm. A very few of them, for a number of reasons, escape or are rescued, and they find themselves in these loving hands across the country and the world. And we are going to forget if we, I live in a suburb. I don't have a cow as a pet or a pig, but they're wonderful creatures all by themselves just because. Yeah. And we are going to lose the ability to even know them without having, zoos are just prisons for animals. Yeah. So, sanctuaries are an opportunity for people to know, to expand that muscle of compassion, quite frankly, to go out and meet an animal on its own terms, living its own life, and just taking that in. Everything we do in this world is about, how does that serve me? Mm. And I'm not saying it's that we are all that way, but that is how society is wired.
Oh yeah.
So if we think that way, it's kind of because that's where we're trained. And they, of course, the lobbyists and the big ag do not want you to know where your food comes from.
Right. And
it is the most tragic thing, in my opinion, we are doing in this modern age. Mm-hmm. It is unbelievably awful. It's awful. It's awful for the animals. It's awful for the people that work there, who are also trapped. It's awful for those small farmers who are indentured servants to the bigger companies. I mean, this has legs that doesn't end. Yeah. It just needs to be abolished. But in the meantime, we as people sanctuaries provide an opportunity for people to understand those animals. And I love that we're doing a lot of education around that, because I really do believe that we have to reach out to the young children, and it needs to be cool to be compassionate, mm-hmm. which, that kind of gets questioned or challenged when you're 14, 13, and, you want to be cool. And, yep. So there's an opportunity here to help these sanctuaries be sustainable, get the word out, help them connect with other sanctuaries, with business practices, because a sanctuary in the end is a business. And if you're going to have an animal that's going to be living for 30 plus years, possibly certainly beyond my lifetime, you need to have a plan in place. Mm-hmm. So we got a sanctuary together where we had 8 different speakers, and they all spoke on a different topic of sustainability and how we can all work together. And I would say the strongest message was education and reaching out to the community, because a lot of these sanctuaries, not all, but a lot of them are in more rural areas where it's quite a journey to come and see the animal. So they have to come up with plans and ways to bring that community in, because we're all going to be better for it if we get to see the animals in their natural state. So we had about 250 signups last Tuesday, which we were very happy with that number, and then we're going to have a couple webinars that are subsequent to it. One about grant writing, because that's a big issue right now.
Yeah.
And then also about a business plan.
Okay.
It's sometimes people come to this space because they love an animal, or because some situation happened where these animals were in harm's way, and okay, now I'm a sanctuary. Yeah. But they don't think they have time to have, a business plan or a lawyer or a marketing plan. And if you're going to take it to a certain level, you can't afford not to.
Right.
So we've reached out to this group, and we have found it to be very rewarding, because they really appreciate having a venue where they can get some help and support. And we're looking forward to expanding on it. And as I mentioned, children, we're going to work a lot with LEAP, with Daniel Hanisch, who is getting educational programs into these sanctuaries, which does a lot of what I'm probably repeating myself here, but that will, I think, grow the web of compassion.
Wow, that is amazing. And it's so wonderful. I remember the night I went vegetarian. So I went vegetarian first. I had read an issue of PETA's Animal Times, which came to me in the mail, addressed to me. I still to this day do not remember filling anything out, whatever. It was like divine intervention, if you will. Showed up in the mailbox, read it cover to cover, and was physically sick the rest of the night, just thinking about everyone I had consumed over the course of my then almost 21 years of my life. And I felt that way because, like you were saying earlier, it is so horrific what we are doing to them, to these animals. And I don't know if it's like continuing to get worse or if it's just kind of status quo for the last 20 something years, but it is so awful when we think about what has happened and what continues to happen to them. And, I've been vegan now for over 10 years, and it's just has brought me a sense of peace that I never knew before. And one of the things that really, I was already committed from the minute I read that magazine. I knew that this was my path for the rest of my life. And I was, the fact that I didn't go vegan right away was now I look back and I go, why didn't you just go vegan? To cheese, I was so addicted. But anyway, but the stories of the animals, hearing what they've been through, and then meeting them, having the opportunity. I live in New Jersey. I've been to the sanctuaries like Woodstock Farm Sanctuary and Farm Sanctuary up in Watkins Glen. And you get there and just the feeling when you step onto that land, where these animals live, who have, for the most part, unless they took in an animal who was pregnant and then they had, their babies there at the sanctuary, for the most part, the beginning of their life is something that none of us could ever understand. What they saw, what they felt, what they experienced. And then you see them at this sanctuary, and the way they are just loving the grass and the dirt and being with their friends, and they have these communities they create together. And then the people who work at the sanctuary are there just fostering it, because there's nothing these animals need to do but be themselves.
Right.
And
exactly.
So for people to be able to experience that, whether it's at a bigger farm sanctuary that people have heard of, like farm sanctuary in Watkins Glen and then in Acton, I think, California. But like, there's also smaller sanctuaries, and there's a word that in some of the notes I have from you, the underrepresented sanctuaries. And those sanctuaries need even more help. Like the big farm sanctuary, they're probably getting, donations from like Joaquin Phoenix, right? He's part of their organization, and, maybe they're seeing big bucks from him. I don't know. But there's these sanctuaries that are smaller that aren't getting that exposure. How can people, one, figure out which ones are underrepresented sanctuaries? And then two, how can they help them?
Well, it's as small as being on social media. Usually there's a story about an animal that they're, saving or is going through a challenge, and there's a little GoFundMe happening. And, I've heard it. It's like, skip the latte that day. Mm-hmm. And donate that $5-10. That is doing something. Mm-hmm. Become, and a regular donor, they really do need regular donations. It doesn't have to be large, mm-hmm. but if they know they can count on your $10 a month, which is tax deductible, mm-hmm. they can plan something. They can have a budget with those kind of numbers. So I would highly recommend that you find some sanctuary in your vicinity or something that pulls at your heart, that speaks to you. It could be anywhere. They're out there. Mm-hmm. And just start small, do what you can. Don't take it on like, oh, it's such a big problem, I can't fix it, therefore I'll do nothing. We all have done that. The world is full of need, and there's it feels like limited amount of supply, Yeah. But the reality is you got to start with you. Let's not consume them. That's a start. Let's make small contributions. Let's get to know, something that means something to you. Everybody's going to be a little different. It's going to be some story that hit your heartstring that I would follow that. Mm-hmm. Because that's a door. That's an opening to a part of you that you weren't exploring. It's appalling to say that of all the donations that are made for animals in this country, about, once again, 97% go to our cats and our dogs. Mm. And I love cats and dogs. Okay, I understand that, but that is, what about the other animals?
Right.
3%. Wow. To the others. It's such a skewed way of operating.
Yeah.
And once again, I believe it's set up that way. So, we're all operating unconsciously, I think, until we're not. Mm-hmm. At some point we wake up. I like to say we're all asleep. I think that's a kind way of saying it, because we're just doing what we're told to do or what we're seeing. And, we're getting these silly or, damaging got milk ads are probably coming back, with stupid mustaches. I'm always in my mind thinking, what could be the counterpoint to that? What could we say?
Yeah.
But the thing about it is that we're this big. Mm-hmm. And, the milk lobby is this big, and we'd all have to be united. Like I think that one campaign is effective where you see a dog on one side or a cow or a pig on the other. Mm-hmm. I think that's a good one.
Yeah.
But we're small. We're small, so we all have to do everything we can.
Yeah.
Because there just aren't enough of us. So that's why what you're doing is so wonderful. And that's why, there's not too much of this. Mm-hmm. It's quite the opposite.
That's true. There is room for all of us. And, I think it's just like with anything, and even going back to, the sanctuaries where you're saying, like, find one where like a story pulls at your heart, because we're all different. We all have this mission, we vegans, of this vegan world, this cruelty-free world where animals are able to be who they are, wherever they are, without us interfering and taking away things that are precious to them, like their own lives, like their babies. But, for one person, maybe they feel more drawn to, like, the story that did it for me was a story about a cow. The story that made my husband go vegan was a story about a pig. Mm-hmm. So it's even just as simple as that. If you have that story where you remember who made you feel that way, or maybe you were scrolling Instagram and a sanctuary popped up and a rescue they were doing really like tugged at you, then that, like you were saying, that's where you go. And so we're this small number, but we're all so different, and we can all come at it from these different perspectives, whether it's a story of who brought us there or whether it's our skills. Like you and I have a voice. We like to use our voice and talk with people and do those things. And others have different skills. So how, like when you think about, oh, well, I don't really want to talk about stuff. It'd be weird for me to have a podcast. I don't like that. Okay. So what are you good at? What do you like doing? And then see how you could work it into helping out a sanctuary, helping out another charity that is working toward this goal of freedom and liberation for all of us.
Right.
Yeah. So you have, you're so awesome, Cheryl. And I'm like so excited about this conversation because you also write children's books.
Well, I've written 3. Mm-hmm. Yes. Through Lantern Publishing and Media. I wrote first Gabriel during COVID when they were pouring out milk because they didn't have distribution channels for it. And I was once again listening to NPR, and a very famous chef was talking about how this was inefficient and that the government needed to turn the food over to the restaurant industry because the restaurant industry had the ability to distribute it properly. And I'm listening to this and I'm getting very angry because I'm thinking to myself, this is the wrong direction. Do you see what's happening here?
Yeah. In
my view, that was an opportunity for people to wake up, to say, whoa, what's going on here? We need to make a change. And unfortunately, I don't think that's what happened, but that's how I was inspired to write Gabriel, because when I get worked up like that, it's like, what can I do? What can I do?
Yeah.
And, so I wrote that children's book about a cow during COVID who was really going to become veal,
Yeah.
So then when I did that, of course, I needed to cover all the chickens and the fowl and the turkeys and the birds. So I wrote Cluck. And then the third book I wrote, because I didn't want to leave the pigs out. So I wrote a book about a pig that found its way, an actual true story.
Aww.
Yeah, about I learned, not being from the South, not living in Las Vegas, not knowing these things, that sometimes during hurricanes, the animals will be trapped in their pens, and they just let them, if they make it, which most of them do not, if they find their way out, if the barn door breaks or what have you, then they're no longer eligible for slaughter.
Oh,
I know. So in this story, his name is Pickle. He's very smart because they are, and he's watching, how they open the lock. So anyway, the water comes in and he's able to finagle it out. And the next thing he knows, he finds himself in a tree and some kind gentleman driving by save him by taking him to a vet, and they then find him a home in a sanctuary, and we talk about that. So it's very much sanctuary forward, about a happy ending for a pig. But I wish I could have written books about turkeys and ducks and goats and lambs and fish. I mean, there's just, every animal needs a voice, because they don't have one. They don't have a human voice.
Yeah. Yeah. So, if parents are listening to this and they're thinking about, oh, maybe I would like to pick up those books, or maybe grandparents who are vegan and maybe their children are not, so their grandkids aren't, just one of these scenarios. Are the books accessible for everyone, or like what can parents expect if they're reading these stories?
Yeah, they're accessible. They're not horrific. They're beautifully illustrated. There's a story to it. There's always a call to action. And, in the case of my books, it's probably going to be a parent reading it to a child or a grandparent, and the child may have questions. And that's what they're there for, is to the parent. Then if a child is old enough to ask a question, I believe they're old enough to receive an answer.
Yeah.
My little grandson, it'll be a waffle. And he'll go, is this animal? Is that an animal? He's just checking it out.
Yeah.
Because they don't know. They don't know.
Right. Oh, I love that. Yeah. Yeah. And, I don't have children, so often I am told that I don't get to have an opinion on things like this. But I agree with you that if children are asking questions, that as the adult in the space, like, you should respect them enough as their own little individual to give them an answer. And like, I understand for sure, like, there's an age where you're not going to go into all of the details of exactly what is happening. But I think there's a way, no matter how old a child is, that you can be honest with them and help them find the answer they're seeking.
These books would be challenging if you were not a vegan parent yourself. I think that would, because you would be introducing your child to, the food system and what that it looks like, and they would be having questions. So if you're not ready to answer those questions honestly and maybe make changes as a result of it, then that book might not be for you. But for those people who do want to, lead with compassion, then these books are good for that.
Yeah.
And children don't have all of these walls that society imposes on us over time. Mm-hmm. And, it's not that we need books like this because of what society does. And because there's, you're going to be having full milk at your lunch every day now is going to be, and they're going to have to know, well, what is that? What am I drinking? It's not good for me. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, our government is not currently aligned with our own best interests, right, in my view. Yeah. And so we have to educate, as a parent, and I am a parent and I am a grandparent, it is my job. It is society's job to nurture our children, in a cruelty-free, healthy way. Yeah. Which right now we're challenged.
Right. And, you make a good point about that too, going back to these guidelines and stuff. For us as individuals, we can make our own decisions about what food comes into our home, whether we're eating plants or we're consuming other beings. We have the ability to choose. But where these guidelines really create a problem is in these institutions where they need to follow those guidelines in order to provide food that is supposed to be supportive of the people who are in that institution. So whether it's a hospital or, a school, and we are putting now people at risk, and food at hospitals has not been great even before that. I've had family members have heart attacks, and then in their first meal after the surgery is like, oh, it's breakfast time. Would you like bacon with your eggs? And it's just like, what are you doing? What? And so it's only getting worse now. And the people that are in those situations, they don't get a chance to choose the way we can choose what is on our plate.
Right. And people will think, well, the doctor thinks this is what I need to eat.
Yeah.
And this is what they have been trained to eat, and this is what they like. And so it's going to be, food is very visceral. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying it's with that. You have to make some changes if you're going to go cruelty free, because we are not naturally fed cruelty-free products. If you go to a restaurant, or if you go to the grocery store, it's a couple aisles that are cruelty-free and the rest of them are not, right?
Yeah.
So you have to be willing to read the labels, and you have to be willing to educate yourself. And as you said, you mentioned some great experts who are, they're doing this pro bono. They're putting it out there, all this, peer-based research for free. Yeah. So the good news is the information is there. The bad news is so is the disinformation.
Right. Yeah.
But children do not have the ability to decipher that. And so it's up to the parents.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So hopefully some people who maybe are not yet living cruelty free are hearing this and thinking that they are in a position of power in their life to make different choices and to stop consuming who and start consuming what. And I think that is always the takeaway I'm trying to find a way for people to get, because I think people who come to it and they're focused on plant-based eating, they want to be a plant-based eater for their health. You can easily, it's almost, I view it like a diet where you can be like, oh, I'm following this plant-based diet the way you say I'm following Weight Watchers or I'm following Jenny Craig or, and I'm going to do this. And then when I feel like, oh, don't I deserve a treat? I've done so good. Like I've lost whatever weight or my knees feel less inflamed. I'm going to go off and have my favorite cheat meal. And they're able to do that because the only guilt is, oh, what am I going to feel like after I eat this? Oh, I feel like shit, I shouldn't have done that. Oh, poor me. But for those of us who come at it from living from a place of kindness and compassion and seeking out options that are cruelty-free, it isn't just about us. And there's so much more in that when you decide to go against what you've chosen to do. You aren't just going off your diet. You're now involved in the death of another sentient being and the harm and suffering that they went through, as well as, like you said earlier, the people who work in those environments. People are maimed and harmed on a regular basis while they're in the process of slaughtering animals. And so it's not just the animals that are being hurt, it's humans too. So anytime people are like, oh, vegans only care about animals, they don't care about people, it's like, well, they're both suffering big time in these systems. So, I don't know where I was going with that, but I really...
Well, I think that we as vegans care about all animals. That includes people.
Yeah.
I think that people are just asleep. I think they've been sold a bill of goods. They've been lied to.
Yeah.
But it is your responsibility as an adult to wake up. You have something that the animals don't have, which is the capacity to choose.
Yeah.
You can make a choice. The animals cannot. They do not have a voice. Right. So, and I find that if you start, however you start, it grows. I don't think about that I'm on a diet.
Yeah.
I don't think I think about that I'm happy that I'm not hurting anybody. That I'm eating in a way that doesn't create intentional suffering. And this world has suffering built into it. So, I'll give them that.
Yeah.
But it's not intentional, and it's less than, eating meat, eating dairy, eating fish, it's I'm not wearing them. I'm not, there's wonderful vegan options in the, synthetic and plant-based leathers, all of these things. We are so fortunate
yes,
to live at a time when there are so many wonderful alternatives. Just give them a try.
Yeah.
And how, is it worth it to have an animal have to go through what they do? And, I don't have to tell you, check it out yourself.
Right.
That's what that animal went through unwillingly so that you could have a coat or that you could have, a hamburger.
Yeah. Yep. And that's where my point that I was eventually trying to get to and didn't get there is that once it might feel hard and big at first, like, oh my gosh, as you learn about where animals are used in all of the moments of our life, it can be like, holy shit, like, how do I even do this? But once you commit to this idea of living from kindness, living from compassion, seeking out cruelty-free options in all areas of your life, it starts to become second nature. The reading of the labels, you don't even think about it, right? And even once you know a product you love, like, you still check the label just in case, because you never know when a company is going to change their minds, and take some of those subsidies and incorporate, casein into something that does not need it, but it does become very second nature. And what I have found too is that, because when I went vegetarian, I didn't really like vegetables. Nobody believed that it was going to stick because I didn't know how to cook. I ate like 2 vegetables and people were like, she's going to die from this, or she's just not going to do it. And because it mattered so much to me to be seeking out that kindness and compassion, I learned. I dealt with, eating really boring foods for a while I figured out how to cook, what I'm supposed to be eating that will actually make me feel good, and going through that whole process. So it can feel big, but when you have that really important meaning behind it, and that guidepost that's like kindness, compassion, it feeds your soul as much as you are, feeding your stomach or whatever. And it doesn't feel so big. So like we were talking about all these kind of like huge changes, and they can feel overwhelming. So for people because I do have listeners who are not yet vegan. So, if they're listening and they're feeling like, oh my gosh, it's like everywhere and everything, I have to constantly think about it. The nice thing is that because it's who you are, you aren't thinking about it in the same way that you would when you're like forcing yourself to do something.
We're eating everything else.
Yeah.
Which is, people are like, oh, that's vegan? Yes, oatmeal is vegan. Berries are vegan. There's a lot of things out there that we're eating anyway. So I know that I'm not arguing that it can be, it's just shift.
Yes.
But there are a plethora of recipes out there, right? I mean, I own so many cookbooks that I haven't even used, but I collect them. They're so attractive, right?
Yes.
So there's that. There's there are, let me think, Plant You. There are a few people who specialize in coming up with nutritious, simple, and affordable recipes. And we know who they are. They're out there. I would start, depending on who your audience is, I would start with them. It doesn't have to be this big chore.
Yeah.
You can season things to take to your liking, just like you can season a chicken, you can season tofu. Right. You can, it turns out just very satisfying. I don't suffer.
No,
I eat all the time.
Oh yeah.
If you have the means, or you have, you're working and you don't have the time to prep and all this, I would recommend purple carrot. I use purple carrot.
Okay.
Maybe not forever. You don't have to do it every week. You can just give it a try, but I love it because I get to pick out my menus. The grocery shopping at least for that part, is done. It
Mm.
all arrives. There's very little waste because they provide that which, calls for in the recipe and nothing more. So many times I go
Nice.
shopping, and this isn't just about being a vegan. This is just about being a cook. How
Yeah.
many times have you bought, this much of that, and you maybe use it once, and
Yep.
then it goes stale. That happens. That's universal.
Hmm.
So we're trying to be more efficient in our cooking, less wasteful. So the thing that I love about it is that something like purple carrot will elevate it because they will bring in spices or different ingredients that you might not have thought of,
Mm.
And once again, you only have to get this much of it to try
Right.
it. Thinking of miso or,
Hmm.
there's all these little spices that come with it, and they add a level to it that just makes it more like you're eating at a restaurant.
Nice.
So I just offer that as a suggestion. I'm not saying it's the most affordable, but it's not terrible. I think it's worth it. I've personally have weighed it and thought about what is my time worth, how is the waste, and when it shows up, it's a commitment.
Yeah.
Because I have perishable food here; it needs to be eaten.
Right.
That works for me.
That's a great suggestion. Thank you for that.
Okay.
I lived in one cookbook last year. It was my favorite. It's a Peaceful Kitchen by Catherine Perez.
Okay.
She's a registered dietitian, so her recipes are all very focused on not just are you meeting your macros, but the micro stuff. Are you getting all your minerals and those types of things? And she doesn't break it down in the recipe, but when you think about these smoothies that she has that include things like hemp hearts and tahini and a little bit of coconut flakes and it's just every recipe that I've made, and I have made almost every one of them in this book, which has never happened in my whole life. Right?
That's impressive.
Right? Every one of them has been so good. Of course, we have our favorites here. My husband and I, we have a little code where in all of my cookbooks, if there are 3 check marks on a recipe, that means we both loved it, and we will make it again and again. And there are so many 3 check mark recipes in that book, and I want everyone in the world to buy it.
Well, it's good to hear because you want to know that you can trust the recipe.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Don't go asking ChatGPT to help you make a lentil dish or something like that. Go to a real cookbook where recipes have been tested.
Because sometimes, you're trying to cook for your friends or something. You're trying to show them. I know for myself, I'm trying to, help my friends see how easy this could be. So when I cook for them, which I do, I always feel pressure. I feel I got to get this right because, I don't get it right. You know what they're going to think. They're going to go, oh, well, it was plant-based.
Right.
You didn't like this stuff, right? So you want a good recipe.
Yes. Yeah. And every one of them, so good. And the other thing that I love talking about waste is that so many of the sauces use a lot of the same bases. So, every week, if you're I'm making stuff from Peaceful Kitchen, you're going to pick up things like lemons and limes, and you always have tahini on hand, a little bit of low sodium soy sauce or tamari. And you start to get familiar with the ingredients. And because she uses them, and, this includes spices and herbs and all the different vegetables too, because she uses them in such different ways, you could be eating the same exact thing for 3 different meals, but it tastes completely different. It's a whole different experience. So you're not getting bored either. It's a magical book.
That sounds like a great cookbook. I've written it down.
Yeah, definitely.
Because I agree with you. You do end up with different spices and the tahini and the miso and things that maybe, you don't have if you're making chicken.
Right.
I don't know. But so now you have it and you want to use it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, they have this wonderful tahini miso paste thing that you put at the base of a plate. Mm-hmm. And then you roast as a sweet potato.
Oh.
And then and how simple is this?
Yeah.
Right? He just lays it. But that and then you could put vegetables on top of that, but that becomes this gorgeous meal with this very healthy, nutritious, fermented base that you can pull into it. It can be very simple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's so good. Like, what are we even doing, right? Like,
right. Let's get back out. Let's get off and get on the kitchen and start cooking.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, being vegan is just so magical. It's my favorite thing in the whole world. Like my whole personality.
I feel like I'm a good person because of it.
Yeah.
And there is nothing, there are no downsides.
Right. Yeah, I haven't found one.
No.
No.
I mean, there's that trite saying, the only thing I regret is I didn't do it sooner.
Yep. Exactly.
Because it expands your because when you're able to feed yourself and you're going to be fine, then you can start to look beyond that.
Yeah.
And that's when you can see the things you didn't see before, because your psyche just couldn't afford it, right?
Right.
Now it's like, oh, I'm safe. I can look. Oh, my goodness, what's been happening out here? I can connect with that in a way that before I just didn't think I could afford it.
Yeah.
It's a game changer.
Absolutely. Oh, Cheryl, I could talk to you all night. But I've got one more question for you.
Okay.
How does hummus show up in your life?
Well, it showed up on Sunday. I had my women's group over, and they know I'm vegan. And so what do they bring? Hummus. Hummus goes with, crackers. It also goes with vegetables. And I love that it's got beans in it, because we all, that's such an important source of protein.
Yeah.
So hummus is it's the dip that we have at every meal, every evening meal. It's got so much versatility, and it's mainstream. Yeah. Everybody accepts that hummus is part of an appetizer tray, or they're not like, oh, what's that?
That vegan thing. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. It's an entree into all that's good and all that's kind.
Yeah. I love it. Cheryl, thank you so much for this.
Thank you, Kimberly. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Yeah, this has been so much fun. I can't wait for the listeners to hear it. And I just can't thank you enough, not just for you being here tonight, but for all the work that you're doing to make this world a kinder, gentler, more beautiful place.
Well, right back at you, Kimberly.
Thank you. Welcome back. To connect with Cheryl, visit her website, betterlifeforanimals.com. Follow her on Instagram at betterlife4animals, that's the number 4, and on Facebook at BLF Animals. And listen to her podcast wherever you get yours. As always, the links will be in the show notes, so you can click right in and get right there. I hope you found this episode helpful and inspiring. Please subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. And if you're loving it, please give Did You Bring the Hummus a 5-star rating and leave a review. It's an easy way to keep supporting the show. Be sure to share these episodes with your friends. If you're finding something good here, they will too. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram at Did You Bring the Hummus, and visit my website, didyouBringTheHummus.com, for more information about me, updates on what I'm working on, new podcast episodes, and all things vegan. Tune in next time for my interview with Anna Ferguson of World Peace Yoga. Thanks for listening.